Yay. So, hi.
Hi.
Hi. Um, Thank you for being here with us. This is our first guest teacher, and I'm so excited to have you be the guest teacher, not only because I love you and I love your work, and I want to just support you in every way that I can and go along this ride with you. But because January, and I know we're at the very end of it, January 30th. It just feels like the perfect time for your medicine. And I know we talked about that when we first talked about when would feel good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that wow, I was thinking, okay, is this a really big statement to be making? But no, I feel like I have been talking about diet and feeling into our bodies and what's working for different people and what different cleanses people are on all month long. It just seems to be something that comes up when we renew the year and we renew, we just get into the renewal vibe.
For sure. And I really feel like 2018's energy is about temple keeping.
And that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. And I think temple keeping starts with our physical body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sacred Vessel Sisterhood, we were just talking in class about if you can really feel safe and comfortable in your first chakra and just in your being a human, being a soul, but being a human in your body and making sure your body feels good and your environment feels good and that you have a nice routine going, you have a really nice, stable framework to go through life with. And I think a lot of the time we get so focused on, the goals and I mean the goals, like the monetary goals and the material goals that are outside of us instead of really, and you're so beautiful at this.
Thank you.
You're so beautiful at really, and I was saying this the other day, at really putting that priority into a very clear felt place so that you are always a person that reminds me to go back to myself and to self-care and to slow down and check in where you're at. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And because ultimately, if we don't have our health, if we don't keep this temple operating at the highest frequency that it can, we can't do our service in this world. And if we can't do our service in this world, then in the paradigm that we live in right now, we can't attract the prosperity into our life that we're looking to attract. So it really all does come down to, let's take care of this and let's feel safe in here. And I think for a lot of us priestesses, we're really happy way up here. Like I used to love my third eye chakra and my crown chakra and doing all the magics up here. But that's not sustainable. And we chose to incarnate into a physical body. So being really embodied can be a challenge, but it's a beautiful, beautiful gift. But with so many of us and our experiences, we don't have a lot of safety tied to food. I think especially as women, we've grown up with a story that is really, really unhealthy for most of us around food. So then how can you feel safe?
Right. How can you feel safe in nourishing your body? I still, honestly, I caught myself the other day because I was teaching about, okay, first chakra, how can we just simply ground ourselves in very simple ways? Yeah. And I said, one way is to eat rooted vegetables. Just like a simple, like deep, like, and I mean, of course, rooted vegetables that have been grown inside the earth. So potatoes, deep down into the earth. And I thought to myself, how funny that you can give that information to other people and make it, it's very simple. And of course, why not have some rooted vegetables? But even today, I have a fear almost of the starchy vegetable. Oh no, you're not allowed to eat that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like who put that voice in your head, right? Like where does that story come from? That you can't have this beautiful gift from the earth.
I know.
And I mean, like nobody said, go and get a extra large French fry and eat that like eat nothing but fries for the next 7 weeks, but
Right.
you know.
But I wish they did.
Yes.
But yeah, I really, that is the thing. This is a little side note. I ask myself every once in a while, I'll ask myself, okay, if you could have one food, what would it be? It's always potatoes for me.
Interesting.
I love potatoes.
For me, it would be pizza.
Pizza?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's the Irish in me saying, "Oh, go."
But see, I'm very Irish. Not so much potatoes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into you and
Sure.
your background. Yeah. So how, like, where would you like to start with that? Because
yeah. So I guess let's start with me being a conventional nutritionist. So I did my undergrad in psychology with a minor in religious studies, and then decided to do a master's in nutrition. And graduated, did a clinical master's, so saw clients, learned all about macros and how to do a meal plan and all of that. Got my start actually working with pretty high level athletes in a functional training facility in my town, and noticed after a couple of years of doing conventional nutrition, I kind of had two groups of clients. I had clients who worked with me for a little bit, but nothing really changed. And then clients who worked with me and had complete life transformations. And so as I kind of thought about this, well, and then there was a pause. Then there was a pause in my career. I had a pretty significant injury and a marriage that ended, and just the universe kind of came knocking at my door and said, Kat, it's time to do things differently. So as I started to work on my own healing and then started to ponder, okay, what made some clients successful and not, I really realized that the clients that had these huge transformations, we had sat down and got really into the why they were eating what they were eating, why their goals mattered to them, why basically. And then as I worked on my own healing, I realized that that was so true for me as well. So I had kind of become that mom that I didn't really want to be, who took my kid to the park and was too out of shape and too overweight to actually get to play with my kid. And I can remember sitting there one day just going, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I want to be able to play. And then once my why got so defined, it was really easy to take care of this physical body because I knew what I wanted to be able to do in it. And then I realized that that was really what I'd been doing with my clients that were successful. So then I sort of had my spiritual coming out party and kind of
been part of you for your entire life. It had just been kind of a secret part of you.
Yeah, a totally secret part of me. And actually, so my injury was a brain injury. And so there's chunks of my life I don't actually remember because of it. And so when I was moving out out on my own, I was packing my stuff up. And I had like this huge chunk of amethyst and this huge chunk of rose quartz that I don't even remember ever buying myself. And I found like crystal pendants. And so definitely, yeah, like that was a whole part of my upbringing, but very closeted. So then I started to work with a mentor, and really her great advice was, first you find your medicine and use it to heal yourself. And then your medicine becomes your service to the world. So, so what I really have done is I've married the two, the spirituality and the nutrition piece. And like at first I'm like, how do these things go together? And now the more and more I dig into it, it's like, how do they not go together? Like how can you really do one without the other?
I just love what you do.
Thank you.
And
I love it too.
Beautiful. I'm sorry, what?
I love it too.
And I love how you said that the universe came in and said, okay, we're going to do something a little bit different, or there's time now to look at things and
Yeah.
see what needs to be changed, because that's that beautiful, that's what I was talking about with you, how you can really quiet down. So backstory, everyone, I've worked with Kat myself. So I get to say as a client, you're so great at really quieting that down. So, you know, we don't have to have a big life event that happens and says like, slow down, look at your life. You come in and say, okay, let's slow everything down. Let's really get some clarity here about why you're eating this way. And I do have a question about the why.
Mm-hmm.
So, because is it two-sided in your view? It's why do you want to transform your life through food, and the way you're eating, exercising, or is it why, or are you really getting down to the root of why people have a pattern?
Yes, it's more that, so people start to work with me for the first. So they'll come in and they'll say, you know, depending on where they are on their spiritual journey, I'll still have clients who come to me and say things like, you know, I want to drop 15 pounds or whatever. Or I have people who will come to me and be like, you know, I've really been working on my sacral chakra and now I feel like I'm ready to like work on the two above and below. So it really depends on where my clients are starting. But what I find, regardless of where they're starting, their intention, their why of working with me usually shifts as we start to dive into it, when they really start to realize that it really is that second piece, that why am I standing in the kitchen at 10 o'clock at night, you know, eating a bag of crackers? Or why do I not allow myself to eat potatoes? Like, what's up with that? And those are when we get to the core of those, that's where the magic happens. Because when we can let go of those voices and replace them with something that's much more nourishing to our souls, then our physical body follows.
Yeah, and that's where the alchemy comes in.
Absolutely. And the magic must have started because my cat joined us. And that, you know, I really realized as I started to study alchemy that I've been an alchemist probably for lifetimes, definitely for this entire life, because alchemy on the surface looks like it's a very physical science. So alchemists traditionally worked in labs to turn lead into gold. But what they really were doing was internal spiritual transformation. So there's an old adage in alchemy that says, until the alchemist can turn their inner self into gold, the lead in the vessel is just going to stay lead. So it really is about taking that internal journey, making that internal transformation, and connecting it to what's going on in your physical body.
Wow. And you as the practitioner, you were forced to make sure that you were on that level.
Yes. Yeah. Like literally, I did a talk once called Sometimes You Need to Get Hit in the Head to Change Your Life. But literally the universe hit me in the head. And I like had years of where all I could do was self-care. Like, so it really, really got hammered home to me. Like, it matters what you feed yourself. It matters how much you sleep. It matters how much time you take to nourish your spirit.
Wow. I don't think we've ever got to this place right now where I'm seeing it this way. I'm sure you have, but you had to go through the training, and I'm sure you've gone through that training, because I also see that you have been an alchemist in different forms for lifetimes. But they had to really remind you, by the way, you're doing alchemy right now, but let's get a little deeper with it, because your bar of what you're in your conventional work, it's right here, it's great, but you have so much more that you know.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like, so I still work with elite level athletes, and I love it. but at the same time, it does feel very surface right now. It's like, yeah, I can tell you, you know, your percentage of macro, like carbs, protein, and fat that you should be eating, but let's dive deeper. So some of my athletes are open to that, some
Really?
not quite yet. But yeah, you know what? The more I work with athletes, the more I really realize they are very spiritual. Like they do visualization, they do goal setting, they do a lot of the things that us magic folk do. They're just not as, you know, woo woo with the language. So
Yeah, it actually hit me. I watched the I, Tanya movie.
mm.
And I had never thought of it this way, but they were talking about, they at some point someone said, and it was either in the movie or if it may have been an article I read afterwards, but they said Tanya was so great at her visualization work. And I was like, wait, hold on. What was she doing? Like vision boards? What's going on? And then I realized, of course, but
if you even think about athletes, like how many of them have tattoos that represent like achievements that they've been through that we would maybe draw a sigil for, but they, you know, create art on their body. Like, so it really, and how many superstitions do they have? Like the number of like lacrosse players I work with who are like, well, you know, I can't wear my beige pants to the arena because the last time I wore my beige pants to the arena, we lost. So now I have to always wear my black pants to the arena. Like, you know, so it really, the two overlap quite a bit.
that's beautiful. Yes, you guys, she is the nutritionist for the Canada's national lacrosse team, men's lacrosse team.
Yes. I got to get my divine masculine, Phil.
Well, that's why I said how awesome that some of them really are open to, and I'm sure that it is going to be shifting and quite quickly.
Yeah.
For you and your experience. There were a few things in there, and then that I wanted to touch on, but they're going to come back. Okay, so I want to take it from, because I know how important when we work together, I know we had to get to the why.
Yeah.
We had to get to the why I wanted to embark on this journey with you. And but we didn't and so okay, so we had the whys, and then we did get into the thoughts behind things, and in the visualization, and the real relishing in some of the food, and allowing yourself, because this is the missing piece that I feel. So this is a little backstory, but I think it's perfect. I dated this guy who years ago, who was really, he was an actor. He was like really kind of buff, and he was always playing the kind of like thug kind of roles. And I was so shocked when we started dating to see what he ate. All he allowed himself to eat was aspartame like kind of treats. So false sugar treats, which are toxic.
Yeah.
And then protein powder all day long. That was it. He wasn't allowed to have anything else. He was very strict about it. And he thought he was being healthy by doing this.
Wow.
And I was so horrified, but it was advice that he had been given from his personal trainer. Of course, this is not a personal trainer that most people want to be going to, but all he would eat was protein bars and then the straight shake kind of thing. And it was nothing about, there was no connection between his feelings about this, about what it tasted like. It was only a result, and it was so disconnected from his body.
Yeah.
He told me too, and it makes sense. As soon as he got out of that routine, because, you know, we go to dinner.
Yep.
He couldn't eat. As soon as he got out of this routine, he would blow up, because his body was like, oh, thank you for feeding me real food and nutrients.
Yeah. The other thing I find fascinating around that is, so also when I work with a client, what we do is we kind of dig into the story at each chakra level. So, you know, we dig into like safety stuff, sensuality stuff, confidence stuff, love, like our relationship with love, our relationship with connection. And what I find fascinating about that story is So here he is playing this big macho guy, so very solar plexus, will, confidence. And all he's doing is feeding himself fake food. Like, how do you stand in your truth and have that really beautiful, confident solar plexus chakra if all you're doing is feeding yourself fake food? Like,
I mean, you nailed him. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So that's the piece I find fascinating. Like, I had a client came to me, and a lot of sacral chakra stuff came up. And when we really dove into it, it came out that she had some food security issues as a child and would oftentimes flirt with boys to get them to give her their lunch. So then you can see how that story, again, like, so sacral chakra stuff and sexuality around food and using your sexuality to get food, like, that's the type of story we get into and reprogram.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Just a question on that. So did she then hold weight in specific areas? Was it around her second chakra?
It actually wasn't working with her around weight at all. It was like a actual, like, autoimmune type issue.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Which brings me to the next interesting part of your work. Food, and then it's or nutrition, really, and then its connection to mental illness.
Oh my goodness, you just like my, like, sweet, tender heart spot.
Because it baffles me, and you're so sweet, and you always have this beautiful, compassionate and understanding way of looking at things, and I'm over here like getting all fiery about it.
I just hide it under the waters, the Scorpio waters.
Yeah, and I'm just like burning shit over here, like, But so it drives me crazy that you can. I mean, about a million things about this, but you go to your doctor and you have something that is very much, like, very clearly, my body is saying something I'm doing is toxic. For example, cysts. I had in the past, I had a problem with cysts and holding toxicity in cysts. My body was building cysts, and I was going to doctors and asking, what can I do? And all of the answers was, oh, well, we'll just take out the cyst. It was never getting to the root of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when it comes to nutrition and the brain and how in our gut, so much information, and please, like,
yeah. So I doubt that it's news, but maybe it is. So I'll share it anyway. So they call our gut now our second brain. So really, you cannot address any mental health issue. And this is like from anxiety, depression, all the way up to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ADHD, autism, like any mental health issue, even the brain injury that I had. You cannot address making your brain well without addressing your gut health. Like, period. And, like, end of story.
Yeah. And also, that's really comforting to me, because that gives you something, because I think a lot of us, I've dealt with depression and anxiety in my life. And I think it gets really scary when it feels like you have no control.
Yep.
Even if you go into its chemicals, even if you get into that part of it, that feels really like, well, I can't see the chemicals. I don't have a grasp on what to do for myself for that.
Yeah.
But if we can bring it to the stomach and what you're eating and your gut health, something physical like that, it feels much more manageable. And
yes. But here's the part that gets tricky. When you're in it, so part of my brain injury came with a lot of anxiety and depression, kind of as a side effect. When you're in it, like, even me in it, who was trained as a nutritionist and know better, and I know that an injured brain craves fuel because your injured brain is just working so hard, like it's on overdrive. So you crave fuel, and what our bodies have come to think of as fuel is sugar. So here I was, post-injury, like, sitting on the couch eating a carton of cookies even though I knew that I wasn't feeding my body what it needed, but at the time I just needed comfort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the beauty with mental health issues and working with somebody who does work the way I do is we can learn how to comfort that anxious part, that depressed part, that injured part, and move you towards fueling yourself in a way that's actually going to help it. So I think a lot of times I would move into judgment because I would be like, here I am depressed, sitting on the couch eating cookies. I suck. But it was a coping mechanism, right? So how do we then, shift to, instead of cookies, like now I have like a half a squash sitting there waiting for me to eat when we're done. Because I'm going to want, after, speaking for an hour, I know I'm going to want something carby, and I'd much rather give myself a squash than sugar now at this point. So yeah, it really is finding that way to nurture yourself in a healthy way without bringing the judgment piece in. And there's so many things, like, I mean, we could talk for hours about the things to help with mental health and nutrition, like the really solid science behind a good supplement protocol, and really cleaning out the gluten and the dairy, because there's proteins in both gluten and dairy that can cross the blood-brain barrier and just make mental health issues a lot more tricky.
So interesting you say that, and I have heard that before, of course. But the other day, yesterday actually, I know that I have a sensitivity to lactose.
Mm-hmm.
I ate a bunch of cheese. I was hungry. I was a little stressed. I was stressed. I was in Hollywood, and it's just a lot of energy. And my coping for that energy was, I thought, okay, ground down with something protein like, and I had some cheese, a lot of it. And it put me almost immediately, I went into way higher anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a weekend, I think it was last weekend, I had a weekend where I just didn't plan very well. I was out more with friends than usual. So I ate a ton of gluten. I couldn't actually get out of bed on the Monday. I was in a full-on depression. Like I literally cried for all of Monday. And I think it was a nice little reminder to myself that food really, like, to love me best, there are some foods that I just I don't like to use the word need to or have to, but I choose to avoid, just because I know ultimately, that bagel is going to make me cry in 2 days. And it's just not what I want for myself anymore.
Yeah. I've realized that I have about a 30-minute window between eating something that I know is going to make me, and it's usually either sad or anxiety for me.
But I think that comes to another really good place, is that we've forgotten how to listen to our bodies. Like you and I were talking about that, not like just before we hopped on here live, like, everybody's looking for the cookie cutter diet. And, this guy at work, he's on the eat nothing but bananas diet, and he's dropped 20 pounds, and I can't even look at a banana, and I put on 2 pounds. And, like, we are not cookie cutter people. So why would there ever be a cookie cutter diet out there? And not only are we not cookie cutter people, we're not cookie cutter people in our own lives. Like, we all cycle. Like, there's times in our lives where we do need more carbohydrates or more protein or more green food, but it's not always going to be the same. And I think, again, it's a really important place to drop the judgment.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Drop the judgment around it.
Yeah. And getting really really honing in on, like, I lead people through juice cleanses 3 or 4 times a year, mostly as a spiritual practice, and really realizing how much emotional stuff is attached to what we eat. And yes, the juice cleanse has a beautiful effect on our body, but I find most people can't get over how much they shift their perspective.
Wow.
And the biggest thing that I ask people is to think about on day 2 and day 3, which are generally the days you kind of feel crappy, is why. Like, why are you feeling like you need to eat that sandwich or whatever it might be? Like, are you bored? Are you sad? Are you lonely? Are you looking for a reward?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and let's try some different kind of self-care. Like, if you're sad, you know, go out and go for a walk, or go for a walk with a friend. Or if you're tired, have a bath and go to bed. Like, we self-medicate with food so much, and we've forgotten it's meant to be a medicine to us and not a drug.
Yes. That leads me actually to my next question. I think you actually answered it. What you thought about that, those diets, and even the diets that are the clean eating diets.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I find that they get very preachy, as if everyone, for me, for example, avocados don't work well for me. And I know it's super cool to have avocado toast, and now you do yoga all the time and you must know everything about nutrition, but avocados they don't work for me. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, so there are, I guess, what you're saying. And here's a question as well. Do you have any kind of practice or any pointers for people, questions to ask, where you can really, so if we can't go out there and say, I'm going to start eating clean and I'm going to choose the Whole30 diet because that's been working for 5 of my friends.
Right.
Is there a way or a practice that you recommend of looking at your food and then waiting to see how you feel, or
Mm-hmm.
you taking or an elimination, something like this?
Yep. So I think doing an elimination diet without having some sort of support through it is a pretty tough thing to do on your own, because it's easy to eliminate everything for 2 or 3 weeks. Where the challenge comes is in reintroducing the food, right? So you go 2-3 weeks without eating any dairy, gluten, sugar, alcohol, whatever you choose as your list. Mm-hmm. Then the 2 weeks ends, and then most people's inclination is to go out and have a pizza with a glass of wine and some chocolate for dessert. And then you've reintroduced every single food you eliminated for those 2 weeks, and you have no clue what the foods you're sensitive to are. So I do think there's a lot of validity in an elimination diet if you are really feeling like there's some foods in your life that are giving you some troubles. But more importantly, I think we've fallen into the trap of making good foods and bad foods, and trying to classify, like all carbs as evil or all meat as evil, or like we're very dualistic in so many things in our culture. But I think it's, for me, any diet out there that basically is, eating what our grandparents ate, it should look like a real food. It shouldn't really have an ingredient list. And it should have, collectively, it should be a diet that's balanced in protein, good quality fat, and healthy carbs. So, there's like paleo and like anti-inflammatory diets, and like any of the diets that kind of just are like whole foods. You can package them all nice and shiny, but they're basically the same. I think those ones fit better for me than things that are very prescriptive. Like, you can only eat lamb. You can only eat, carrots on Wednesday. You can only eat whatever it might be. Those just aren't realistic, because what we're really looking to shift to is, okay, how can I do this for the rest of my life? Like, there's no point in eating nothing but, like, because I've done every single fad diet. When I did my master's, like, we actually had to try them all so that we would be able to give honest feedback to people. And so I've done crazy cleanses. Like I did a cleanse once where all you could eat was lamb, sweet potatoes, and maple syrup. I think that was it. And like I still to this day can't eat lamb because of that. Wow. Crazy.
You created a sensitivity to it.
Yeah. So I just think those aren't realistic, right? Like to me, it is all about making permanent change to that story and getting to a point where you're actually craving the foods that your body really wants. And you would much rather, like, don't get me wrong, there's a bakery in town, the baker studied in France, and he makes these, like, you walk by it and the entire street smells like butter and deliciousness. I have a Danish from his store every Saturday. Come home, have a cup of coffee, sit down, eat it, love it. That's what food's meant to be. But we also should be able to sit down to a beautiful salad that's got fresh everything, and have that same feeling. But so many of us just eat and shove food in our mouth and don't even realize we've eaten it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is like, we've forgotten how good healthy food tastes. And when you sit down to make a plan with people, they almost are white knuckling it from the beginning, going, I'm going to have to eat nothing but grilled chicken and broccoli and brown rice. And it's like, no, like there's so much beautiful food on this earth for us. We just need to relearn how to feed ourselves that.
Yeah, I remember being shocked even when we worked together and you gave me some recipes and you were like, okay, so we talked about magnesium, we talked about the anxiety, and you asked me, okay, so do you like chocolate? And I was like, oh God, don't take away chocolate. You were like, you should be having really high quality dark chocolate and you can have it every day if you want, just a little piece. And I was like,
yep.
Okay.
Yep. Like I buy a big dark chocolate bar with almonds in it. I break it up into the rows. And so right now I could go to my freezer and pull out my baggie, and there's like a row in there, and I have one every night with a cup of tea. Yeah. And like, that's my ritual and it's my gift to myself. And I like, when I started my journey, even before I brought the spiritual piece into it, when I started my journey, I released 60 pounds and have kept it off for the past 6 years, despite not being able to work out because of my injury. And I released that 60 pounds by eating a piece of chocolate every day, because I said to myself, I'm not creating a meal plan for myself that makes me feel like I'm lacking.
Oh, wow. How important not to have a huge part of your life, what you eat and how you enjoy food, have that be centered on the emotion of lack.
Yeah. Because
that immediately trickles into the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to make sure that I don't lose this, because everything you say, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, let's jump onto that. Release. The word release. She uses the word release instead of lose, because when you lose something, you want to go find it. Oh my goodness, you lost your wallet. You better go find your wallet. You lost your cat. Where's your cat? When you lose weight, there's a part of your brain, and it just like blew my head off when you said it this way to me. When you lose weight, you want to go find it again. Your body wants to, you don't want to lose things. But if you release it, you don't need it anymore. There's no desperation there. There's pure confidence, compassion, love. The beautiful space to move into, to release. I shared that with my mother, and she was like, "Ooh,
it's good." Yeah, good. And it like, I think it because of I've had that mentality. I think that's a part of the reason why I like, this is the body I inhabit now. Like, there's not even, I know a lot of people, when they lose a lot of weight, they live with a lot of fear that it's going to come back. Like, they always hold on to that last pair of fat pants, or whatever, because they're like, I don't want to commit to having only size 4 jeans, because what if I need the size 16 again? And I didn't really because of that concept of releasing, it has stayed released. So.
And how important would you say, I know in terms of manifesting, we all know that getting into a really grateful space along the process of manifesting, whatever it is you're manifesting, whether it's to release weight or get yourself into a really beautiful mind, mental, gut, symbiotic relationship there, whatever that journey is, how important is it to really enjoy the process? Because you might go on some crazy lamb crazy diet, and maybe the results are happen very quickly in a week, and then they all come back, whatever. I would expect that really digging in and getting into the work behind this.
So when I work with women, because the majority of my clients are women, we always layer in ritual and ceremony, and a lot of it is based on giving gratitude for where we're at in our journey, and visualizing where we're going, but doing that visualization from a place of being already there, and how does it feel, and how grateful, what are you grateful for now that you're in the space that you're aiming for. I think another thing that's really important for women is really tapping into our sensuality. And I think a lot of times when you're in a body that doesn't match how you feel, whether it's that you feel too skinny or too large, because I think equal.
Yeah.
I've had clients on both sides. Yeah. Really tapping into that sensuality also is huge for being comfortable in this vessel that we inhabit, and just moving, eating sensually. Like, I remember I was at a conference once, and you always go out for dinner with the random people that you meet at it. And after our meal, this woman who was sitting at the other end of the table, she came up to me and she said, I have never watched somebody make love to their dinner like you did. She's like, it was such a sensual experience watching you eat. And I hadn't really ever realized that that was a thing I did. But I think that I've realized, for me at least, that's what sensuality means. It means moving through this life, experiencing everything with every sense. And food, how it look like. I go to the farmer's market every Saturday, and I get giddy looking at all the beautiful food, and then bringing it home and cooking it and smelling it and tasting it and just enjoying it. For me, it was a huge shift to be in that space as a single person, because I think a lot of times self-worth stuff comes up. Like, I would easily spend all day in the kitchen cooking for a husband and company and all of that. But then when it ended up being just me, I would be not feeling worthy of that beautiful meal. So that was a huge part of my journey as well.
Wow. And that immediately, you really pulling in your senses while you're eating reminds me, or just the image of it brought me to Italy, and my family in Italy, and the culture in Italy, and a lot of Europe, where I think there's this phenomenon that happens where you can go to Italy and really enjoy the food, even if you live in the United States. You can eat, here's what you ate for the whole week. And actually, I'm gonna change that. If you live in Italy, this from experience, and if I brought that list of foods that I ate every week, and then I brought it to the US, I feel like I really enjoyed it there, and it didn't affect my body in any kind of negative way, because I really loved it, and the food was fresh, and the food was from a farmer that actually was in the same region, not just Italy itself, but in Tuscany, let's say. And there's just this love that the food gives back to you as you give it to it. And we have a disconnection here, at least in the States, and I'm guessing in Canada as well. where that doesn't not work. It's not like simple science. It's not, here's the food I ate, I'm going to eat that in the States. In the States, it might not work the same for me. And I hear a lot of people say that, where there really is this hugely important, this connection between how you feel about the food you eat.
And, you know, it goes back. So I could absolutely answer this question from a spiritual point of view, but I feel like the people on this call probably get that piece. So I'm going to answer it from a scientific point of view, actually. There is huge science behind eating locally, because we are meant to be lunar solar cycle people. So, you know, the days get longer, it gets warmer, we are programmed to do certain things. When we stop eating food that's also grown in our same local environment. So, you know, a tomato grown here in Ontario is in the same energy, in the same cycle, the same circadian rhythm as my body. So when I eat that, we match. So the information matches. So now I switch to eating tomatoes that are grown in California. They don't match me.
Those are my tomatoes. What are you doing?
They're your tomatoes. Yeah. And also even eating seasonally, right? Like where I'm from, you can't find a tomato this time of year. You can't find a strawberry. But I mean, I certainly could go to the grocery store and pick up California tomatoes and California strawberries. And we're not in tune with that information that's stored in that food.
Right.
And there is some theory actually saying that is where some of our fertility issues are coming, because we're eating food that doesn't have the same circadian type information stored in it.
Wow. And so, of course, but wow, because we've been programmed to think that, no, if I want to have artichokes year round, wherever I live, let's do that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And on the spiritual side, we're really talking about energy and how your body is going to release what it doesn't need, right? And what it doesn't, I would expect that the releasing process, let's say, would be a lot easier with in terms of energy, for energy that is of the same frequency. So like we can release it because there's no like jarring effect there.
Yeah. And then also speaking to the releasing piece, and also then I want to make a comment about the energy piece. Yes, so the releasing piece, I find also as we dig into the story and rewrite it, so often as we hold onto a story, we're holding onto extra weight. Sometimes because we want to feel safe, we want to feel actually smaller, even though we're larger. Having extra weight around us makes us feel protected, like no one can really see us. So sometimes it's when we dive into, it's safe to be seen, it's safe to be me, it's safe to speak my truth, then we'll see the weight start to release as well. And then the other piece around,
I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I just probably without even a diet change, you could just go into that story, start feeling safe. Wow.
Yeah. And like, you know, sometimes I don't even start with changing what a client is eating in that first visit. Like, I just really want to tap into, okay, why? Or eat. Like, I don't really care what you eat right now. I just want you eating because you've been denying yourself for so long. So it really, you know, I can sit down and give you a hardcore meal plan, but until we start to look at that story piece, one, you're going to resist it because we haven't really tapped into the why behind why you've got the story going on. So I want to start to dig into that before I then am like, eat more broccoli.
Right. Wow. And that must be shocking for a lot of clients.
Well, not so much now because of the way I offer my services. So Rewrite Your Food Story is a package that I offer. So I set it up pretty clearly that we're going to be looking at your food, but it's not in a silo. It's interwoven in everything.
Amazing. And then you wanted to touch on something to do with
Yep.
energy.
I don't remember now. So,
okay.
yeah. So
yeah.
I'm just looking at the time, and I feel like I could keep talking, but I
talk forever. But we should talk. I want everyone to know.
Well, I also feel like I'd like to ask some questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Answer some questions.
Let's do that. While that's going on, because I got caught up in just like diving in, playing with you. I'm going to leave some links here about your class that we can get into later.
Okay. So yes, energy and frequency was what I was going to touch on. So I think what I really wanted to talk about that was, I feel like as a human species, we're starting to evolve. And the best way to do that is to start to eat foods that are at a higher energy and higher frequency. But I think we need to be very cognizant of doing it as part of a gradual transformation and a gradual journey. So I think a lot of times what happens is, like you talked about the avocado toast, and now you do yoga all the time. And I think there is this push where people are like, all I'm going to eat is like green juice for the rest of my life. And it almost puts our body into a bit of shock and dissonance, because now we're eating all of like this food that is at such a high vibration, and we're not quite there yet. And then there's just this dissonance. So
wow.
While I do actually think down the road, I think we are going to pretty much consume all of the nutrition we need through liquid. I think that's where we're going, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. So I think a lot of people put a lot of judgment on themselves, like, I'm still eating meat and I feel like everybody needs to be a vegan or a raw foodist or whatever that is. And I think eventually, yeah, we will all sit around and drink green juice together. But again, I think a common point with me is just don't judge yourself if you're not there yet. And sometimes you do. If you do really feel like you need to be grounded, choose a grounding food that works for your body. So I often think about this transformation a bit like a slinky. Like sometimes we're vibing really, really high. That's when it's great to like bring in all the juices and all the amazing like chaga teas and all of that. And then sometimes we're not vibing quite as high. So not that then you want to go and eat really low vibe food, but maybe just bring it down a little bit. So, cook yourself a squash as opposed to drinking that green drink.
Wow. Okay. I love that. So cook yourself a squash, you actually mean bring yourself down to a lower, to a denser frequency. So we're eating something from the earth like that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And here's a personal question.
I
actually don't know. Do you eat meat yourself personally for your body?
Yeah, so I've been struggling a lot with this one lately. So I'm a blood type O, which is like the blood type that really does best on meat and vegetables. So my body does feel so great eating meat, but as I've been doing more and stepping more fully into my spiritual life, I am being pulled much more intuitively to eat less meat. But right now it's a dance for me, because if I go too long without eating meat, I do still feel quite physically sick. So I've switched to all, like, I know the farmer where I buy my meat. I know the farmer where I buy my eggs. So at least that energy piece around the meat is clean. I give thanks before I eat it. And I eat way less. So that's where I'm at in my transition. My son, he's 11. Since he was 2, he's been a vegetarian by his own choice. And for those of you who on the call who might have kids, I was listening to a really fascinating interview the other day where the woman said that the kids that are being born now actually evolutionarily are different than us. So they actually are coming in not being able to hold dense food like we do. So if you have littles in your life and they're asking you for smoothies, or they're asking you to not eat meat, like my son said to me, like at 3, I don't want to eat dairy anymore, Mom, because I don't like the way it feels in my body. Mm-hmm. So he's pretty much as close to a vegan as like, I think he eats goat cheese. It's probably the only animal product he eats. And I've been very respectful of that.
Wow.
So yeah, so don't be shocked if your littles are pulling you more that way.
Wow, evolution right in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So if anybody does have questions.
Yeah, do we have any more questions, you guys? Let's get in here. And in the meantime, I have, oh good. Lizzie wrote down the link, and I have the link here too, because you have the Rewrite Your Food Story class coming up.
Yep. So I'll be joining Lizzie to teach that. So this was a phenomenal conversation. That one's going to be a lot more of a container. So some really good first steps that you can take to rewrite your food story, some journaling prompts, some, just laying out how to kind of dive into that as a solo journey. Obviously, it's much more powerful when you work with a guide, but there's definitely a starting place that you can do on your own. And that's what we'll be diving into that night.
And it is so financially reasonable. What is it? I'm not sure if we're going to be giving out that info here. We have the link here, but
yep. So it's $22. Yep. Yeah, amazing. Totally. Like a really good first step in your transformation by investing in that, for sure.
That's a beautiful gift. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you for sharing that too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any more questions. This has been so nice. And of course we just flowed.
Yes.
What came through, and
we enjoyed the journey.
We did. Oh, so nice. I wish I could hug you through the screen, but
me too. So good.
I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for being here with us, and everyone on this call. Thank you all for being here.
And if people want to get in touch with me, I'm certain my email is somewhere around here.
Yes. So at the very top, actually what I have here is your website.
Okay. So I'll just type in my email.
Beautiful. What is your sweet kitty's name?
It's Fiona.
Fiona. Hello, baby.
She's completely deaf now.
Oh.
I know. She's 16.
Oh, sweet girl.
But she's my magic girl.
She has beautiful eyes.
So this was wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me into this container.
Yes, thank you for coming. And I want to thank you for really shifting the energy around food and releasing weight and food stories, because it's so necessary, and there's so much real trauma that we store as women, as men, but really as women. We've been programmed to disconnect from our bodies and to have some real tangible shame around what we give our bodies to nourish our bodies, the medicine we put in our bodies. So thank you, because this work is so important.
Well, as the divine feminine rises, we need to fall in love with this vessel that we've chosen, and really learn to love taking care of it, and not seeing it as a have to do, but seeing it as a beautiful gift.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Good night.
Good night. This is recorded. I'm going to be posting it, and everyone on the call, everyone who registered is going to be getting that link.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Mwah. Love you.
I love you. Bye, everybody.